We got heckin' books we want to get through this month. Hi everyone, my name is Maddie and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be going through the videos that I would want to read in October. It's spooky season finally. I'm able to wear my big flannel. I have my little skeleton earrings on. This one's missing a leg, but I think it makes it more spooky. I had a cup of tea today. I got some like spooky nail colors going. We're vibing, really vibing with this. I'm filming this late at night, so I'm using a lamp. What a radical idea, me using proper lighting. So I'm hoping to not like lean out into the shadows too much. I'll be keeping an eye on myself through this video. We have another very ambitious TBR this month, but we're just gonna roll with it, and we're gonna see how it goes. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the very first book on my TBR, which I actually just finished, so this might be cheating, is Loveless by Alice Oseman, and this is a romantic asexual coming of age, coming to terms story that follows Georgia as she goes off to university, and she's obsessed with romance, but she's starting to realize that these might not be things that she will get to experience in her life. I was just about to review it, but I'm not going to. This was actually on my September TBR, so that's going to be my first couple books that I'm going to go over, are ones on my September TBR that I didn't get to that I'm going to carry over to this month, and this was the very first book on that list. So next on my list is the book that I just started, and this is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and this is his newest book that just came out last month. I'm super excited to read. I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to it in September. A poignant comedy about a crime that never took place, a would-be bank robber who disappears into thin air, and 8 extremely anxious strangers who find out they have more in common than they ever imagined. I love Frederick Bachman's writing. I've loved pretty much all of his books that I read, although I wasn't a big fan of the sequel to Beartown. This is another book I am super excited to read. I'm just moving books around, so when this jump cuts, it's going to look super weird because there's going to be books everywhere. But next on the books that I'm carrying over from September is Fire Song. So this follows Shane after the death of his sister, and the one person that he wants to find comfort in is his boyfriend, but they're kind of hiding their relationship due to some prejudice and outdated ideas on the reserve. So he's trying to figure out his life, his sexuality, his relationship, as well as figuring out if moving to university is still something that is going to be feasible to him. It's actually written by the director who created the movie, so I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to watch the movie then read the book, or do it the other way around, since normally it goes from book to movie instead of movie to book. So that should be an interesting read. Alright, 2 more that we're carrying over from September is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, and essentially it's kind of like a sci-fi fantasy novel. And this is the best way to sum it up, I think. It's every great city has a soul. Some are ancient as myths, and others are new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 6. So I think it's going to follow these 6 characters that kind of are the personifications of the different boroughs of New York City. So that one sounds really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to reading that. And then the very last one I have to carry over is I actually called this book my boyfriend's husband the other day, which is not the title. It's My Brother's Husband, which is a manga, and it follows, I believe it's so this Canadian shows up on their doorstep and basically says that he is the widower of the main character's estranged brother. So there has a lot to do with Japanese culture and the way that homosexual relationships are viewed within that culture, and taking a look at that, as well as these ideas of family. So I think that one will be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to getting to that too. With that being done, my next 3 set of books are kind of my spooky season reads. I'm a big fan of horror, and I'm trying to like branch out from Stephen King novels because I read a lot of Stephen King novels, so I'm trying to find some different ones to read. Paperback Dreams, who's booktuber I talk about all the time on this channel, she did her horror TBR, so I kind of went and pulled some off of there, and I have taken 3 out of my library that I can find right now, and then there's 2 other ones that I think I'm going to pick up while I'm at home over reading week because they don't have ebook copies of them. So the very first horror novel that I've taken out is called The Orange Eats Creeps by Grace Kralanovich. And the description is it's the 90s Pacific Northwest refracted through a dark mirror where meth and madness hashed out in the woods. A band of hobo vampire junkies roam the blighted landscape. So that sounds interesting to me. I've heard it's a little bit of like a bizarro horror in a sense, so I think that that will be a very unique and a different book to read. Also, the cover is just super fascinating, so I'm really looking forward to that. The next book that I have checked out from the library is Sisters by Daisy Johnson. Born just 10 months apart, July and September are thick as thieves, never needing anyone but each other. Now following a case of school bullying, the Tees have moved away from their single mother to a long-abandoned family home. So it seems to be that these sisters are kind of, there's some sort of sense of dread and uneasiness that's going on in their life, and they're trying to push their boundaries of behavior to rebel, but then they're also trying to figure out the limits of each other and the things about their past, their present, and their future that they're not communicating with each other. So I'm not sure if this is going to be more horror or a little bit more on the thriller aspect. It seems to be ranked as both, but we'll see, because I find sometimes the lines between those two genres get a little blurred and it's hard to follow. And then the last book that I have checked out from the library right now is Things We Lost in the Fire, which is by Mariana Enriquez, which is a collection of short stories, and they've been described as just like picking some words out of the Goodreads description. We have macabre, devilishly daring, dark, disturbing, black magic. So there seems to be a lot of different themes going on there, but playing a lot within the horror genre, so I'm really looking forward to that. It has been a long time since I've read, like, I want to say, like, gory or really dark horror. I've definitely, like, with the Alex North books that I've been reading and some of the Stephen King, I've been dabbling in horror, but I haven't, like, thrown myself into a story that, like, gives me nightmares and leaves me, like, terrified in a really long time. But it's October. We gotta put it all out there, and we have to get it done. With that being in mind, the other horror novel that I want to read is The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. That one was just turned into a Netflix film starring Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland, among a bunch of other actors that I've heard a lot of rave reviews about, so I really want to read the book so that I can watch the movie. So it's set in rural southern Ohio and West Virginia, and it follows a cast of characters from the end of World War II into the 60s. So it seems to be, there's a lot of, like, there's preacher, by the looks of it, a tormented veteran, a team of serial killers, interesting. So it seems to be, like, very much like an ensemble horror, like it focuses a lot on the individual characters and what's going on in their lives, and then how they all interact with one another. So that should be really interesting. One of my favorite things about books tends to be characters, and I love stories that are very heavy and character driven. I've also heard rave reviews about this book. It has a really high rating on Goodreads, but so did The Only Good Indians, so I don't know. There's no way to tell sometimes. So those are my horror reads for the month, and then the other kind of, they're not really horror, but there's two other books that I have on my list that one of them I'm going to be able to pick up from the library when I'm home over reading week, and the other one I've had on hold for a while and it's finally coming in. So they're both memoirs. The one is We Have Always Been Here, which was a Canada Reads pick, and now one of the libraries near my hometown has picked it for they kind of do like a one book, one city type thing where they encourage everyone in the city to read the book and then the author comes in and speaks on it. So they're going to have the author come in and speak on this, and I believe it's a memoir that kind of has to do with her religion and her sexuality and coming to terms with all of that, and this idea of, like, these terminologies or these belief systems are being, like, made up or created, and recognizing that these identities and these people have always existed, even if they're not always as visible. I've had a lot of family who read it who seem to enjoy it, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. And then the other memoir I have on my TBR this month is What My Mother and I Don't Talk About, and it's 15 letters by different authors to their mothers, some of them who are completely estranged, don't talk to their mothers anymore, some of them who just have complicated relationships, and it's just looking at unpacking and dealing with some of those relationships, which seems like a really fascinating idea, because I think there's a lot of things we don't say to our parents because we're scared of having those conversations, or we don't want to hurt their feelings. So it's kind of looking at unpacking and tackling some of those difficult subject matters or conversations that we wish we had, or things that we wish we said. So that's another book that I'm really looking forward to being able to pick up and read. Besides that, I have two kind of like mini categories left. So one is books that I have to read for school. So I'm a double major in gender equality and social justice and English. So I do a lot of reading for my classes. I have 2 novels for one of my classes that I need to read. The first one is, oh, the lighting does not like that. The first one is Northanger Abbey, which is a Jane Austen novel. So I've never actually read a Jane Austen novel before, so I'm very interested because this will be the first book that I've ever read by her. So it was her first novel, but it was published after her death, and it tells the story of Catherine Morland and her dangerously sweet nature, innocence, and sometimes self-delusion. So I'm reading this for a course that I'm taking that's the Romantics, that's looking at that period of time. So I'm going to start that one. I think it's sometime this week. For some reason, I really regret, with COVID and everything, I ordered a lot of my books online. But some of these classics, they just decided that the font needs to be as small as humanly possible. So now I'm trying to find like free ebooks, because most of the books are old enough that there's a copy of it online, so that I can read it without straining my eyesight or needing a magnifying glass. Besides that, the other book that I have to read for that class is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which I read this summer. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do a full reread of it, or if I'm just going to reread the parts that I liked and skip over some of the parts in the middle that were a little bit long. Either way, I'll definitely be taking another look at that sometime this month. The last novel that I have to read for school, or the last book I have to read for school, is One in Every Crowd by Ivan E. Cody, and this is for a queer media course that I'm taking. I believe it's a collection of stories. It says, for everyone who's ever felt alone in their struggle to be true to themselves. So I believe it's kind of like a memoir about the author's own experiences and what they've learned and garnered from those experiences. I'm really looking forward to it. It seems pretty interesting and probably not something that I would have found on a bookshelf by myself. So that's always exciting. So that's kind of like my official TBR for the month, because I think that brings me up to something ridiculous like 13 books again. And I told myself I was going to read less this month, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think especially with reading week and being home, I'm probably going to read a whole bunch. Goodreads also just like sent me a bunch of new releases or books that are coming out in 2020, and there was a lot of those that seemed really good and really interesting that I put onto my like TBR on Goodreads. So I'm curious if I'm home. There's like a big Indigo near where I am, and my brother and I are going out to pick up a couple things near there, so I might drag him along with me to see if I can find some of those books and do another little haul to pick up some more books to read. Maybe not this month, but maybe next month. Just something to keep in mind. Besides that, I don't think I can have a Halloween, October, spooky themed video without reading any Stephen King novels. I have a whole bunch of them on my stack at home. These are the 2 my parents dropped off at me at school last time I saw them, so these probably will be the 2 that I'll end up getting to, if I have enough time to get to them, of course. So Skeleton Crew is a collection of short stories, the very first being The Mist, which I actually read. I'm not sure why I didn't finish reading the rest of this, but there's a couple other stories in it. So the first story is where this mist traps humanity in its swirling horror. The next is a beautiful young girl's offer satanic seduction, where a child's toy becomes the ultimate instrument of evil, where a man is given a devilish machine that grants him godlike powers, and the last one where nothing is what it seems and nowhere is safe. I'm a big fan of Stephen King's short story, or I guess like mini novella collections. Sometimes I do find it difficult though, because I'll love certain stories and hate other ones, and then I never know how to like properly rank it. That happens a lot with me with short story collections though. So I guess I've already actually made a dent in this, having read The Mist, and I just have to read the other ones. So that is on my list. And then the very last book that I have is Heart of Atlantis. I don't even know if this one is a horror. This cover has been sitting, I've had this book on my shelf for years, and there's a lot about this cover. I don't know if it's technically a movie cover, because it seems like a mass market paperback. I don't know, I get a lot of my Stephen King books at book sales because I can usually find them there for pretty cheap. Okay, although it's difficult to believe, the 60s are not fictional, they actually happened. Wild. Let's see. I love when they have to like explain the entire author to you on the back instead of actually jumping to the story. In Hearts of Atlantis, King mesmerizes readers with fiction deeply rooted in the 60s and explores through 4 defining decades a haunting legacy of the Vietnam War. As the characters in Hearts in Atlantis are tested in every way, King probes and unlocks the secrets of his generation for all of us. Okay, so this doesn't seem like a horror, so maybe I'll put this one off till November, but either way, reading Stephen King in October just feels fitting somehow. So that's what we've got going on for this month. If you want to follow me as I read, I will link my Goodreads down below. I'm going to start updating my blog once a week again, so that will be in the link below. And because it's October, I'm taking part in the Inktober challenge, so if you want to see my daily art that I've been putting together, that will also be linked down below. In the meantime, that's it, I think. I hope you all have a good week, and I will talk to you soon.